Just waiting to see whether we are live. Yes, we are. Yep,
Yep,
perfect. All right. Welcome everyone, whoever is catching us live, or if you are watching the recording of this episode later. Welcome to Two Studio Heads Walk Into a Bar. This is a space that has been created for small creative service businesses like independent consultants or studios to discuss the hard part of our work, which is to look at the business side of things and figure things out, and especially in the Indian context. Uh, Today in our episode, uh, there are four guests. We have never had, I think, four people join in the call, so that's a first. This is also a new tool that I'm using. So in case there is any issue with the live stream, uh, then please bear with me over here. Just experimenting with a new live streaming tool over here. So let's start with the introductions today. First up, hi, I'm Savik. Most of you would have seen me over multiple episodes. I run a small strategic web design and development studio based out of New Delhi and Cambodia, called Miranj. Uh, with with us, we also have the long time collaborator Tejas. Tejas, would you introduce yourself?
absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Tejas. I run a small studio called Three Sided Coin, and we are a web plus product slash strategy and all the buzzwords, all the fancy buzzwords design studio. I'm based out of Ahmedabad, and rest of my team is remote distributed in India.
Oh, nice, excellent. Okay, now we have two new guests, and I'm super excited to first have Hamsa. You introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, super exciting to be here. I'm Hamsa and I am an independent consultant, but I run a studio called Thoughtfoot. I work on mostly content websites and web applications, and I have a background in communication design, and now I do digital design, which is all your user experience. Plus, I dabble a lot with front end code. So yeah.
Welcome, Hamsa. Thanks a lot for taking out time on a Saturday morning, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you. In the previous times that we have had like nice long conversations like these. Also on the show, we have a surprise. We never thought that we'd have this the fourth person, and there's Rahul with us, a person who I have been uh, kind of stalking on Twitter for a while now. This is the first time I'm getting to meet him as well. Rahul, welcome to the show. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi guys. First of all, thanks Sobik for having me here. My name is Rahul Beniwal. I'm a digital designer. I've been working with tech startups since 2014. Unlike Hamsa, I don't have a background in design. I finished my engineering and switched into design. So you could say that like that's where the being an independent designer life started. And yeah, I worked with a few tech companies like Zomato and Urban Company. And since then, I spent a few years freelancing. I had a studio for the past 2 years, and very recently, I've gone back to being an independent designer. I usually work. I mean, I used to start. I started off working in all sorts of design because, just the way that I started, there wasn't any specializing to begin with, and so I started off dabbling with graphics and branding and things like that. And now I've steadily progressed into just working on interface and experience design. And even here now, I've realized that I prefer working on apps over websites. So maybe like I'm the odd one out in this group to some degree. But yeah, that's me.
Thanks a lot for your introduction, Rahul. It's a pleasure to have you on the show with us. Uh, Two quick plugins first before we start today's conversation. We have a Google form on the YouTube link, which you can use to suggest what are the future topics we can take in our conversations. We also have a Twitter account, which is Two Studio Heads. You can follow us. You can also interact with us over there, again, primarily to suggest what topics we can have in the future. But also, if you want to participate in these conversations, we would love to have different perspectives, new perspectives. So please reach out, please DM us, and we can try to figure out where, in which future show you can participate with us in our conversations. Coming to today's topic, this is episode number 5, and the topic is to fly yourself or to build a crew. Essentially, we are trying to compare the two different modes of running a creative business. We are always talking about a small size team, or a small size studio or a small size business. That's the core of our conversations. But within small size, we are talking about, again, two parts. One is that you have just started yourself, or you might not have just started, you might have been running your business for a while, but you're working largely independently or just with a co-founder or a partner. So that is what we mean by being an independent consultant, a freelancer, a solopreneur, if you prefer that word. But on the other side, you can have more entrepreneurial ambition or a business ambition, and want to start building a team for yourself. So you start hiring, and you have other creative professionals or other service professionals working alongside you. So we want to largely compare how the business side of things look different when you are in these two different frames of mind. That's the basis of our conversation today. Before we dive in, let's try to also understand what has been our individual journey so far when we compare these two different modes. So let's start with you, Tejas. Tejas, can you just walk through your business journey? Have you experienced either of the two sides or both the sides, and in what order have you experienced them?
So I think I have been going through phases most of the time. Uh, when I started for almost the first year or so, I was just one person. After which we hired a few devs to become sort of an end-to-end design studio. Uh, then in 2013, we formed Uncommon, which was a larger group, more co-founders, both designers and developers. Developers also across streams. So we had web developers, we had Android people who were like focusing on Android and iOS, and then we had designers also with similar preferences. Like some would work across web or products or website content websites versus some who focused more on product. And then in 2017 I went back, and when I left Uncommon, I for 2 years I was again running solo. And then since 2019 we started to scale up three-sided coin again. So while at Uncommon, the three-sided coin branch of Uncommon, which was in Ahmedabad, that had only one person for the most part. So it was
Okay.
solo, but within a larger group, then going back solo, and then scaling up again from that. So it has been sort of going through phases. I hope it's not really timed, and then like next year I'm solo again. I hope that doesn't happen. But yeah, so that's been our journey in terms of solo team.
That clearly points to where your preference lies, Tejas, whether solo versus team. Okay, Hamsa, please tell us about your journey. How has that been?
Sure, sure. Tejas, just to ask you one question, is there, have you ever worked in a company that's not founded by you?
Uh,
Yes.
Good question.
Yeah. So before actually, I got fired from that, which is how I ended up starting the studio in the first place. Like the first come, the when I formed Three Sided Coin the very first time, I had lost my job in recession, the recession, subprime recession that happened in US. I had to come back, and I realized like I need to really like, and this is a tweet worthy quote. I needed to be owner of my own destiny.
Oh,
Whoa,
awesome.
whoa.
Okay, Naval should now just
Awesome.
retire. We found a new one.
Awesome. So, my journey has been like I haven't worked in an actual job ever. I came out of college in 2009, freelance for a year, then started a graphic design studio for 4.5 years. And then me and my partner decided we need to kind of like explore our own interests. And I started having a bent towards digital design, and so that's when I went and studied front end code, came back, and I started as an independent consultant. I was taking projects independently. and that happened for about 2 years, 2.5 years, and for the last 2 3 years, I run a studio called Thoughtput, and I also end up collaborating a lot with other talents and skill sets. So for the last 2 3 years, it's been very enriching to get a lot. Even though I'm running independently, I'm kind of working with a huge bunch of talents around me. So that's been great so far.
Right. So when you started out right at the beginning, when you say you set up a studio, how many people were there in that?
Uh, five in all. Like so, it was the founder, me, and three more people.
Okay. So Rahul, please walk us through your journey in this, so that we get a sense.
So, like I said, like I started off being an engineer. I graduated and I switched into design. And so my first job was with this app called World Around Me, which was a friend startup. And there, I guess you could say that I was working in a team, but like I was working as a digital marketer, and only towards the end of the few months there, I switched into design. And then subsequently, I managed to wrangle a job out of Zomato somehow, and that really became my degree. I after that, like at that stage, Zomato was like considered to be one of the best in terms of design. I would say even now, so it really negated the need for me to go out and get any sort of credentials. And so at that stage, being in a team really helped because like starting off, I needed people to be there to teach me and like to help me understand what it takes to like really pull this off. And after that, I joined Urban Clap, where I was again like in the team, but I was their first product designer. So and their only product designer until probably like 6 months into the job. So that was kind of like me being solo within again an organization. And after that, I think just like Tejas said, like I figured that you can either be the master of your own destiny or I can keep working these jobs. So and the market for this was great, so I decided to take the plunge into like being a freelancer, and I did that by myself for a while. So even when I was freelancing in my first gig, a couple of years into it, I started collaborating with other designers on projects. Mostly because I realized that two pairs of hands is better than one. Honestly, like it really came down to that simple and understanding. And then I partnered with Juhi 2 years ago, and both of us started our own thing. Even then, like it was just the both of us that would technically be counted as the team. Over the years, we collaborated with a lot of designers on different projects, brought on people depending on their skill sets, and that enabled us to, maybe serve clients slightly better than a fixed team would have. And now, I mean, now I'm by myself, but like I definitely feel the need for a team. Like I think if nothing else, to just take away the drudgery of getting design files hand off ready. But like, yeah, that's sort of that's been my
All right.
understanding through these stages.
Yeah, we
Not
we,
the
we
not the best hiring call.
No, no, I was actually thinking whether I should put in a hiring plug here or not, but yeah, now that you mention it, I probably will
I
start.
think we all
yeah,
should at the end of
I
this.
I think we all I think we all should. I
Yep.
definitely need
Yeah.
to actually.
I think
so
that,
so
that will come
at my
in the chat.
end, go on, Rahul.
No, sorry, I was saying that hiring bit will probably come up in the challenges section of trying to build a team. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
we are going to get into that conversation real soon. So at my end, I'll just walk very briefly. I haven't had as many changes as each of you have pointed out. During my undergrad days, I had done some freelancing. So that was my like absolute individual kind of an experience. But then I really don't count that as much because at that point of time, it was like I was trying to earn my own pocket money essentially. It was not really looking at business. It was not really looking at it professionally enough. It was more around, hey, I have a gig, let me just do it. Someone's paying me some money. But beyond that, I had joined a large, like a very large Indian IT company. The likes I would never want to work at. I joined there for about a year and a half, and I stopped from there and I started my own work. So I don't count that experience relevant for this conversation at all. That's way outside the league of this conversation. But from once I left that job, I started a studio with one co-founder, and we were for about 7 years just two co-founders working together. And after about 7 or 8 years, we started adding a few people. So now we are at a team size of five. So I've had a very linear journey in that manner, not going jumping between us, running my own business versus having a team, and then again going in two three different things, or multiple job changes also is not something that I've experienced, just one that I have experienced so far. Now, having said this context, I think a great thing that we have is that all of us have experienced uh, kind of both sides in some way, right? Where we have experienced places where we have full control on what work we are going to do, what and not having to manage anyone, or not having to add anyone to the team, not bother about people issues beyond ourselves in a way. But then we have also probably seen the other side where we are working with other people and managing all of those things. Let's start with the first part, because at some point of time everyone starts solo or individually, or like a small, like even if you have to grow a team, you have to start at zero at some place. So what does that journey look like when you're working by yourself, or with just a founder and no one else? You're not managing a team. You and your founder, or you yourself, have equal stake in the business itself. What does that journey look like? What are the benefits and the challenges of that journey? So Hamsa, can I start that question with
Yeah.
you, because I think you have had a good amount of that experience, and definitely have some thoughts around it.
Sure. The first thing I wanted to say is that whether it was solo or with a founder, I think there's a big difference there. I think when I ran a studio with a founder, with a co-founder, the fact that this, like running solo is a lot, is you need to be very emotionally strong, like to know that, all right, there are going to be these, these waves that come in and go. To have a co-founder at that time to share that load is a huge asset. I would say from that standpoint, just having a co-founder to know that if you're profiting, you are part of that celebration. If you're losing, you are part of that loss. It gives you a lot of, and you kind of like, it becomes very reactionary where if they are down, you kind of like try to pep them up and stuff. When I went solo, that was the biggest like kind of change, because I literally called my ex co-founder and I said, I miss you like for this aspect. Like, I've got something really good going, but I don't feel like, celebrating with someone else. And likewise, when I'm in like a really bad soup, it just feels like, oh no, like I'm the only one in here. There's no one around. So I think that's one difference. Just, I don't think from a work point of view, but from a, like, just to have that support, really, it's sometimes underestimated. And I think now I've come a long way from that, but I think the initial 2 years were very difficult for me in that
Mhm.
aspect. But running solo, like, can you repeat the actual crux of
the
the question? I
the
just,
the What are the benefits or the challenges? Can you
oh,
describe
okay,
the journey of running
yeah.
a business as a solo founder, or a solo
Yeah.
business person?
I sometimes feel like, I hadn't thought it all through. Like for me, the whole idea of going and getting a job was not even in my head. Like, and I was just thinking, how did that thought never come to my head? So it was a very default thing for me to say that, all right, now I need to kind of do this. So I would again count my real independent journey from 2015 when I had done a short front end development course in Canada. I came back and I said, all right, I'm going to do digital design in India, because everyone who are doing it is like either in advertising, or they're kind of or they're not designers doing it. They're either dev shops or advertisers who are doing this kind of website. And I really wanted, as a graphic designer, I really wanted more control. But for the first 2 years, I was again trying to build a base, because I started saying no to all print projects, because that's the stuff that came my way. But started taking any digital work that came my way. And I think benefit of being a solo person at that time was that I could say, all right, I will do front end on this project. Okay, I will do like the visual language on this project. And I was so agile in those first 2 years, where I was I found myself working on a web application and writing all the front end production code, and on the other end, like working on this very nice content website with animations and stuff. So dabbling with such a different degree and just trusting your intuition and doing that was a very nice journey for me during that time as well. I did hire someone briefly for that period, which again, because we're just starting out, it would kind of like, it is something that I was trying to figure out solo, but again, with a team and trying to look out for them. So I felt only like, okay, I need to make sure that they are okay in that entire dynamic. But for the most part, for the 2 years, I just felt like I had so much like leeway for experimentation. And so I think that was one of the biggest benefits starting out. But I'd like to hear like Rahul's point of view as well over here.
Yeah, I think you kind of summed it up for me as well, Hamza. Like the benefit of being with someone, being with the co-founder is definitely like the emotional highs and lows like really get mitigated. Like when I was doing Studio Tandem, there was, I think that at least once every month we'd get on a call and just be like, dude, I'm so glad I'm doing this with you, and I'm so glad that I have a co-founder too. And Joey and I mean my co-founder and I mean we've been friends for years now, so there was like a lot of a relationship to lean on, and that's definitely like number one on that whole thing, right? And of course, just having two sets of hands working on something, to having, and as opposed to like even hiring someone, like the level of attention to detail and the care that you put into your work is, there's a degree of difference between a co-founder and an employee that you can't make up. You can do whatever you want, but it's not going to happen. So that those two things I think really stood out for me, and also just having somebody to like look at things that you're not looking at and have that level of trust that okay, this is going to get done the way at least the way that they wanted to, as opposed to somebody trying to get it right for you or something of that sort. And like being solo, frankly, like just like again, like Hamza said, the agility to choose and do what you want to do. I think that like having two design co-founders was also a little bit of a challenge, because you don't necessarily have, like designers, as designers we tend to be really emotional, and we either have the conviction or we don't. Only a user can convince us to like maybe change our minds, but we're not going to sit in a room and listen to other stakeholders and be like, hacha, theek hai, what you're saying is completely correct. That doesn't like it genuinely doesn't happen, right? Like it takes a little bit of getting used to do that. So I think that like being solo, just having the conviction and then being able to execute on parts of the process that you have conviction in, and like the freedom to do that, that makes a big difference. So like certain designers might prefer to go very research heavy, some might prefer to go very like visuals heavy, and whatever their approach may be, whatever their preference may be, like you need that like genuine conviction to go after it. And being a solo designer, there's no gap between conviction and execution. You don't have to sit around and convince somebody that this is what we want to do or this is what we don't want to do. So yeah, so I would say that those are like the two to put it in a crux. Those are the two factors to
So
consider.
it sounds like when you are by yourself, just the freedom to choose what you want to do, not having to answer to anyone, not having that pressure of being answerable, or having to discuss, and that agility, the word that Hamsa used, that is the most cherished thing as an individual working. Uh, Tejas, would you agree with this, or do you have anything else to add to this point?
Uh, I agree with the agility part totally. Like it's uh, but I feel the that agility gets outweighed by if you have a larger team, or if you have more designers on your team. The benefit you biggest benefit you get is the variety of ideas, which sort of, in our case, it just outweighs the freedom and agility part entirely. Because as a designer, like both Hamza and Rahul said, you don't have to convince anyone else. But which for me meant that I was going for set patterns for designs that I already had, a set thinking pattern also to approach a solution. And when we started to scale and brought more people in, that was the biggest change I saw. That now I had to be accepting to their ideas, but that would ultimately broaden. how we could approach any solution. So for us, like I stayed solo for the longest time for that reason of agility, and the other reason that I didn't really have confidence in me
Hmm.
uh, to handle a team also. Like, how do you convince other designer? Like Rahul very rightly said, you have a very strong idea, and other design person has the strong idea. How do you actually convince them that one idea versus another is better, or the best idea is probably somewhere in between, or a third completely different one? Uh, Similarly, uh, uh, like there's also a very subjective part to design. How do you actually pass that on? You already have developed for 7 8 years, you have developed a certain taste, a certain way of doing things. Do you want to continue doing it that way, or how do you even create benchmarks for quality in design that your other team members are able to meet and exceed? I didn't have confidence on those things for the longest period, which is why we never really expanded at Three Sided Coin, never really expanded in the design front. We had developers who could do brought other skill sets and do other work, but no one to really either challenge or collaborate on the design side of things. Even as uncommon, like we didn't internally collaborate a lot on design. Every different location or every branch was doing their own things. So for me, that was the biggest mental block I had to overcome, which I feel is a mental block for a lot of designers. How do you let go of that control and then control over the work more than the agility or doing everything that you want in terms of time, or when and how you want to take up any project. But the other thing is in actual work, how do you let go of your that control and let the other people share that with you?
I'm very curious about how you got through that mental block because I can totally relate to that. There has been the agility, and it is also a consequence of all the decisions I've taken, right? To be kind of solo and doing this. But I feel there is also that block in my head
Yeah.
about, and I would love to hear a little bit more further down the conversation. Like
Sure.
one thing I wanted to say with Sovik was you said that there's no one to answer to. There was like the freedom and no one to answer to. I feel like there is a lot more heavy lifting to be done with client management, especially like I don't think anyone who is not to not like keeping accountability as one of their biggest traits should can actually stomach the things that is required to go independent as well, because I think accountability is the biggest asset. So I feel there is a lot more hard work when to prove yourself when you're a solo kind of independent setup versus a company, because a company kind of can hide behind that banner. You don't take things too personally, like all of those things happen. But when you are solo, it becomes a little difficult to, first of all, that client accountability is, I feel, it's much higher by design itself. Yeah.
Well, Savik, how do you handle this at Miranj though? What was the inflection point? You were always two people, but what was the inflection point when you said, okay, more people?
So our journey has mostly been the fact, like very similar to what Rahul said. I knew my co-founder for long back, so there was already one relationship that was going on out there. So we added this business relationship, but the biggest thing that we had going our way, which I feel is also the biggest losing point. I would say it's a strength as well as the biggest losing point, is that we have very similar philosophical ideas. We have very similar value systems. We have we kind of disagree on some things but agree on many things in a way, which is what brought us together. But what this also means is that because our personality traits are similar in some ways, then it kind of closes us out from other ideas that are out there, or other ideas that how we will get to work with this people, this person. Will this person value the same things as we value? So there's, once you see yourself and your co-founder have this one idea that kind of works really well, then you start seeing on the positives, and you're not always seeing outside the nest you are in a way, or outside the well in a way, that how things are working outside, which are different. So for about 5 or 6 or 7 years, we were very much trying to get our craft in order without realizing that we are not really doing it as a business very well. Like business wise, we were like quite bad in with most terms, but we were happy. Now that is the catch, where if a business person would come in the mix, then suddenly you'll realize, oh, there are other things that a business person needs to think about. Like this entire conversation that has happened, and I was going to slowly navigate it towards the business side of it, is because most of these thoughts are is the creative person's thoughts. How good my work is going to be, what can I let control go? No, I really want to push. I have something to prove to the client that I can do something good and all. And then and we will totally avoid like what are the numbers saying in terms of the business, what are, how are we growing as a business, are what are where are we heading to as a business, do more people know about us and find out about us, is our brand building happening well? And there are so many business functions that are out there, out available. The consequence of this, something like this, has definitely been, if I reflect back at this point of time, that we were constantly paying a cost in terms of our business. Our website is still the same as the 10-year-old website. We have made 40 or 60 client websites, but our own website hasn't changed for the last 10 years. We have not done a single marketing campaign or anything on the things that you'll think on the business side of things. The only thing that we would have probably done a little bit is like go to conferences and speak about ourselves, or our work or something like that. But beyond that, there are so many business roles that are out there. Everything was suffering, yeah, in a way. So somewhere around the seventh year or so, we realized that we are going in cycles, the cycles of dry spells and wet spells. And why do we do it? Because no one is taking care of the business. And I still remember this was an explicit, and Pratik, my co-founder, and I love to have like these long conversations. Like we'll take the smallest of topics and do 6 hour conversations, and everyone who knows us, they know that these guys are going to talk for hours on a small thing. It's just not worth it. But again, our temperament matches, which is why we are working together. And we'll have a long conversation, and we realize that, look, we are constantly caring about our craft. No one is taking care of the business. And we every time we find a new exciting project, we take it on. We'll work for 3 months or 4 months, and all throughout that time we'll be saying, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not available for the next few months, and I'm not available until our pipeline completely dries up. People just think that, oh, Miraj is this hot a team which is always unavailable, and then they stop contacting you. And then suddenly we are like, hey, where are our project is done, where are the next inquiries out there? So once we had enough of that cycle, I think it takes in advertising they say that you have to see something 6 times before you like it really registers in your mind. Then there was this conscious call where we said that, hey, one of us should take care of the business side of things, and the other person should take care of the creative and the execution side of things. And from that point, I think these things started getting applied, that hey, if I have to grow as a business, or if I have to do well as a business, then I need to think of hiring, I need to think of sales, I need to think of marketing, I need to think of so many other inefficiencies that I'm seeing. And that is when we started kind of switching. I think that has been our journey, in a way, that realizing that even after going like being out there for 7 years, we are just going in circles. The circles of having a project, doing well, putting it out there, after a few years seeing that project like being totally changed. Like other those experiences also happen, that you look back on your project 2 years back and like, what have I achieved? Like those projects have been anyways either taken down or skewed up by other designers and other developers who have come in. And then you're like, what is our progress? I think that is when our switch has happened. So I do want to know, from Rahul and Hamsa, this is, I wanted to turn the conversation from being a creative to being a business minded person, in that sense. If you look from a business point of view and all the things that you have had to do, and business activities that you have to do, uh, sure, the agility part, the flexibility part, from a creative space, what projects you pick up, that is the the freedom that you have, but what were the costs you were paying, or what were the challenges you were facing through the journey of being independent or being freelancer? Were there things like you were not able to take up projects because you didn't qualify as a team? And we certainly experienced that. We felt that, hey, we can't take on this, we would love to do the project, but being such a small team, they'll never give us this project. Why will they trust? So what were your challenges in that journey as a business when you put your business cap on? Hamsa, let's start with you.
Yeah. Let's start at the proposal stage itself. Like the way that I work is, I kind of speak to the client. There are many exchanges that happen before the proposal stage. So there's a lot of investment of time that happens because when the proposal is drafted, it's a very detailed kind of document describing the scope, the goals, all of those things. So the conversations that lead up to it plus the proposal, it takes a very different kind of mindset also to get into that and to be the thing to execute. But I feel like over the years that part has grown so well, like in my like independent journey itself, where the investment of time required has like upfront really helps inform the proposal, and hence and also allows me to get the time to understand if we are right for each other. And I think all of us in this group are the kind of people who, if a client comes and tells us like this is what they want and we know that we are not the right fit, we say, this we are not capable of handling that scale. So I've not been I've not been disappointed by that really, because sometimes I just feel like, all right, this uh, this way of operation allows me to work on really interesting work as well. But there have been instances where one or two projects I was like, when your bandwidth is completely clogged and there's this really nice query that comes in, you're like, it would be nice to just have predictable set of like people around who can actually take the baton and like while something like this happens. So there have been instances like that, but I don't know how that process can be replaced, because I feel like a very big designer when I'm doing the briefing, the conversations and the proposal. I feel like a designer more than a business person. Like I don't think I'm applying like these laws of business. I'm just going with what I think is the solution to the problem, and I think so. I don't feel like there is actually like a separate thing. And when I think of like maybe that's the path that I should get someone in for, I'm like, but how will they do all the hand holding that I do? Like it's so scary for me to outsource that bit. For me, the most delicatable parts of it are the execution side of things, because those are the things that are predictable. I can put a call out for that and things. It is difficult, but like those things can be there. And I've also noticed that because I told you the first 2 years there was agility. In the last 3 years, what I've noticed is there's a lot of collaboration happening, and there's a better collaboration network that has kind of formed because you're just kind of a little bit more out there. People are a little aware of your work and aware of you. So your collaborators are also more open to you. So now I feel like I can kind of predict that, okay, this collaborator is someone I can count on like a couple of months down and work out timelines like that. So if I can actually manage and sustain this, it would be good, but it's a lot of work. Like it's a lot of work to manage collaborators who come in and then go out. But I'm trying to kind of perfect that model so that it actually runs a little bit more efficiently, because that's my ideal case. I would love to just pick people who are the best fit for that project, work with them, and then go to another project, pick the people best fit for that. And the type of like people from a development standpoint also, if you need like a different type of developer, like a Rails developer or a WordPress developer or something like that, it becomes more like agile, even like finding collaborators for that kind of work. So I would say that the collaboration thing is something that has really saved me in the last 3 years as far as yeah,
I
working
want
on
to
slightly larger scale goes.
I want to definitely add my support to the point where you said that during sales the mindset is so different, and
Yeah.
during execution your mindset has to be so different. Like in our earlier days when we I was not always wearing the business hat and just thinking business, I would get uh, I won't say offended, but disappointed when people negotiated on money. Because hey, I value my craft and this, and when I wear the business hat, I'm like, hey, I need to have room for negotiation because that's a part of the game. In a way, like such these trivial things that you, as a creative person, when you're too attached to your work, too attached to your craft, you don't realize that hey, you're never thinking the business value angle, you're never thinking that angle, and you're completely in that focus that when we are going to do this work, it's going to be creatively great.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the client is always thinking of what business value does this add to my thing, and how do you sell that business value. And then in a way, it actually, when you start separating those two things out, you also realize that hey, I have to start thinking. But then I must also add that why this particular point, you could be a single person, and if you're really good at it, you can master it in the way that to be in a different frame of mind while you're trying to sell, and in a different frame of mind while you're trying to execute, I guess so. But absolutely a valid point out there. Rahul, would you add your things, like when you would be as a freelancer or an independent consultant, what are the business challenges that you feel you would face? What are the things, what are the roadblocks that you have been facing?
So I think like honestly, if even when people speak to me about like going independent or trying to get into the freelance space, because I've been doing it for a while, a lot of people that I used to know in the jobs, they're still in jobs and they think about it a lot. For me, I think the biggest challenge is just staying cash positive. Like like as mundane as it might seem, but like that's really what enables you to stay at it for a while. And
Hmm.
like you can't look at a month's paycheck as just a month's paycheck. You have to look at a month's paycheck as what it equates to over a year or something of that sort. So like that basic math, I feel, is like the difference between you being in a freelance career and staying comfortable versus you being in a freelance career and sweating bullets when you don't have a project. Because
Yeah.
like you said, like those lean periods come, like there's no way avoiding them. Sometimes like a wet period will come and you picked on a project. Like it's happened to me so many times and I have a very very hard time saying no. Like that's one thing that I really struggle with. Whenever a project comes on, I'm just like, "ठीक है, we'll take it on. समय निकाल लेंगे. We'll figure it out." And that's sort of how I approach it. But yeah, like just managing that is a big problem. And I think then keeping that in mind, then that's subsequently like a bunch of challenges come up, right? Like how you mentioned, like negotiation is a big part of it. And for me, like that's the skill that I actually spend a certain amount of time on, trying to learn, like as opposed to just like learning more and more about design or trying to, improve my process overall. Like just figuring out negotiation is a big part of doing the job and like trying to close. And I think what you mentioned about business value, right? Like that's something that as creatives we find a very hard time like separating from actually like what we value our craft as. So that distinction is really like once you understand that, I feel like that's when you start cracking negotiations. Because for you, like it might, for you might value your craft at a certain number and feel like, oh, this is what it's worth. But like for a business, if it's not worth that, then you're wasting your time talking to them, right? And like that's something that for me is critical to figure out, like in the proposal stage, that is this business that I'm like, will I by the end of this conversation be able to give them enough value to justify my price, or will I not? And like in a lot of times there have been projects which I have really wanted to work on, but the scale of the project is not commensurate to the sort of charge that I want to ask. So in those cases, I've told those clients that please, like we'll talk later when you have something bigger to do, because otherwise it's really not like worth either of our times to be doing this. So that's for me, like that part of the process is really like most critical, right? Like, and if you can solve these things, if you can figure out like how to communicate value and like uh, assign a certain, I guess, value to your value, that helps a lot, like going forward.
Yeah.
Other than
To
that,
add,
one thing that you did, sorry, one more thing that I did want to add was you mentioned that like having a team makes a big difference. And part of my inspiration over starting my previous studio was just that, like I could see that there were certain projects and certain clients that we were just flying under the radar of, just because we were positioning ourselves as freelancers. So the notion of like starting a studio came to be as almost like a business solution, like as opposed to any sort of creative endeavor, wherein we felt like, okay, if we team up and we present ourselves as a studio, we'll effectively still be doing the exact same things, which is exactly what any other established studio does as well. But like The only difference being that we could propose, I mean, we could just package the product differently, essentially, right? And then it made it more attractive for clients. So, and that bet paid off. Like over the past 2 years, we saw a huge difference in just the kind of clientele that we were dealing with, the scale of projects that we were dealing in, because we could position ourselves as a studio or a team.
Oh, nice. So Tejas, why don't you weigh in a little bit on this as well? Like, tell me how things change from being a individual or independent consultant to when you start adding team members. How the things change over there, and what how is if you can also in the same light recount some incidents, some places where you feel that these were the triggers for me that I wanted to get a team for myself, that will kind of help us put things in perspective as well. So Tejas.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So the first biggest thing that has changed now is I can take vacations without really worrying.
Big one, no?
That's a big one. Like now I can take vacation like at least a week without really worrying about the fires that are raging back home. But on a serious note, uh, the bigger change, like I so agree with the things that all three of you said, like points that you made. One, running for the longest time, not as a business, but as a creative individual who's probably just unemployable, right? Who's running their own thing because they are not employable. They have so strong opinions, then probably feel they wouldn't fit in any single mold for a very long time. So let me annoy different people every 3 months instead of annoying the same people for a year, right? So running like that and not really focusing on the bottom line beyond the fact that you are able to comfortably live, right? So that's not really a business. You are freelancing, you are running a solo show. It was not really a business. Still, we didn't move it into with that business mind as such, and I still have a problem with everything that Rahul and Hamza mentioned. Like not being able to move out of that creative zone and really handle business as a business person versus even saying no to everything at like upfront at certain point that that's something we are just like I'm still learning. I've been doing it, practicing it for a while now, like 4 or 5 years, but still learning how do you just flat out turn down things which don't really align financially or rather to the value that you are going to bring to something, right? So those are challenges, but where we benefited a lot is we are able to experiment more with more people. So uh, also the inflection point sort of was one point where we had a project which was going to run for a year, so we had that predictability in our cash flow,
Yeah.
which was the time when I was like, okay, uh, let's not worry about anything else because now is the time we can take that risk to add another person so that we are not turning down any other work that comes our way, but also in addition don't really have to worry if this person takes a while to settle in because we already are cash positive from other side. So that was the biggest point. And from then, when you see the value in it, like started seeing value in it, like my blockers were being taken care of by the other person who had joined, and the value of collaboration. And yeah, and then from slowly that just sort of expands, I think. But something like I don't know, I think Hamsa or you mentioned this that uh, people who have that, like even as an individual freelancer or individual contributor, they have this mindset to switch on and off between uh, being creatives while they are working on something versus being business owners in that negotiation and proposal phase. I think those people realize very quickly that they need to scale. Like I see my other co-founders from Uncommon, and all of them at a variety of degree had that in them. Like they were business owners at the same time they were creative practitioners. So that's I think that's a trait one could either realize and train themselves on, or they always have it in them. But yeah, I really appreciate that quality whenever I see that. Like,
But
oh, you
I
are able
think
to
I think
switch.
whenever you're thinking, you're going in circles, right? Like, okay, I have a sales now, then a project
Yeah,
execution,
yeah.
sales now, project, or circles like dry spell, wet spell, dry spell, wet spell. Think. anytime that loop repeats like 3 or 4 times, there is that big itch. I don't want to. I want new experiences.
Yeah,
Basically, I don't want to go back to an old experience and then do it again, and go back to an old
actually,
experience, and or maybe I know how to do it. I want to do something different now. In the, like, I know how to sell it. Let me just processify it and give it to someone. Or I
yeah,
know now I know how to what are the steps involved in executing a project. Let me processify it and give it to someone, and
yeah,
let them do it, and let me take on different channels. I think that always happens, and that kind of makes you take this call in a way. Or at least at that point of time, as Hamsa had put some time back in our chat, they start dancing the line, on the line between, should we start getting a team versus, or should we carry on as a solo. So Hamsa, do you want to add anything to how does that dancing the line feel like, and what ways are you thinking? Anything you want to add to this?
Okay, you should also remove a third. You should also put a third line is which is or get a job. I think for the longest time, I think the last time I had a thought of, oh, should I be like doing that go like I'm there's also constant worry that, right? Because you're building skills so laterally, like where you are doing everything and you're trying to perfect everything, and you almost become non employable. Sorry, am I audible?
yeah. Now
Yes, you
you're
are.
audible.
Can hear you throughout, Hamsa.
Okay, so you almost become non-employable. So I think when all of those of like those big companies started coming to Bangalore and like became bullish about hiring, there was a moment at that time where I was just thinking, hey, I'm doing this. What if I become unemployable in the future? Building skills in such a kind of spread out manner instead of doing it so linearly like one would do in a job when they're assigned to do just user research, or things like that. And there was a dancing between all those three aspects, like at least start. I would reckon that not any solo person would not have that fear or that mindset. In the last 2 years though, like feels that it like let's instead of worrying it as well as you can. I have dance between that line of like the fact that I should be solo or I should build a team. I do feel that I would go that direction, especially like it's very valid because he's seen both of those sides. And I kind of like when I see his studio and stuff, I resonate and relate a lot to kind of person and the work that he does well. So I would a lot more. Doing everything is a lot, but it can be avoided after a point. And I'm just thinking of what you said, Souvik, about templatizing and processifying everything. I also feel like wouldn't the journey be interesting if you processify with someone else, kind of someone else, because we are trying to make it perfect in order to hire. But what if those hires are the ones who actually make it perfect? Like, so I'm just thinking about it on things, and yeah, like that I have to say about this.
I
Yeah.
I must ask something to Tejas on this, and Rahul, you can also weigh in on this as well. Tell me, when you have a team, there has to be some downsides, right? We have not discussed and touched upon that
Yeah.
point at all. So before Hamsa makes up her mind that, hey, yeah, she should have a team, there should be at least the contrary voice over there, that what is the downside of having a team which you did not have while you were working, so doing a solo journey out there. So Tejas, can you shed some light on that? And Rahul, if you have some experience on that, you can also add after Tejas.
This is live streamed on YouTube, so my team at some point is going to watch this, and you want me to say this?
That is, see, this is one live example of how your mind shifts are changing, how the agility is lost, how you are unable to speak your open mind when you start working with people. So Hamza, that's one example right there.
I'm making a list. I'm making a list.
uh, I think not really a downside. It's not a downside because, but more of an adjusting to do, which is any new person in your team is not going to become productive and not going to actually warm up to your own processes, your own standards immediately. So with the team, we had to like have those uh, uh, have those times which are where they sort of eased into the company and not really not were not put on some really big thing immediately. So that was one. But on the ongoing basis, after those initial teething problems are done, ongoing you're always managing. Now earlier you were managing one person's beams and situations. Now you're managing at a scale, right? Some of the like a few of my friends run larger companies, and their thing is like every week, every day, we don't have at least two or three people attending because of something. They have like a 20 people team. So these type of things start coming into picture. There is a lot of unpredictability in terms of everything from attendance and even health, right? You want to keep starting a company, you want everyone to be at their best, or and they want to enjoy, you want them to enjoy the process, the relationship in the company, right? So you want them to be at their really best place mentally, physically, and everything. Those things become unpredictable at a larger scale because you can only tell about yourself, right? Like you're only like, okay, I'm not feeling well today, and I'll probably take I know what is happening, I'll probably take a crocin and I'll be better by afternoon. Now your team member has a very different is a different human altogether, who goes into like if it's a mental health uh, they are not feeling 100% fit at certain point. It is possible that their process is completely different, their responses are completely different from your own when you were in similar situation, and those things are not predictable. Like even for them it's not predictable. So we have kind of started to reach out. I started to reach out to practitioners and mentors because we want these things. I want to learn how to handle these things in my team, right? If someone's feeling anxiety or someone's not feeling 100%, how do we as a company handle that situation? What if they need to take a break that's longer than whatever paid leaves we have, right? So these type of a lot of operational questions start to come in as soon as you have a team. As soon as you move it on that move from that being 1% to 2%, now you have to formalize a lot of things. You have to, and those things you need to learn yourself also because as Hamza was saying, like we are creatives, we are not like business, but we are not trained in business. And even then, like a lot of these HR and legal, you run into a lot more things now versus being a solo person. So your own operational overload is now kind of very different. You need to pick up all those things, and you need to still manage a way to meet your deadlines, to communicate the same things to the client, while sometimes you don't have predictability on the other side. Like you don't know if your team member is going to feel well and come back in a week, or maybe it will be 10 days. How do you then manage the project, right? If it was you could probably either you know yourself and you have a predictability, or you just, even when the fever goes down a little bit, you'll probably cover like 3 4 hours of work, or you do something like that. So that those operational challenges, you don't foresee them. Like a lot those you only experience, and not everyone experiences them also, and not everyone has the same response to those challenges. But those you only know when you kind of get into it, because that's where everyone's experience starts to differ from each other. There might be a team who never see these type of problems in their team members, like uh, uh, and they are probably not also as sensitive to the uh, all kind of health issues of their team members. So that I think is not really a downside, but something that you don't realize when you are just running a solo show.
Rahul, do you want to add something to if you're running a team, or if from you could tell all your experience from the other side as being a part of a team as well. uh, what do you feel is are the challenges in that side?
So I think that like from the creative standpoint, there are definitely, I mean, very known challenges, right? Like just collaborating with other designers, like we've touched upon earlier in this conversation, like getting your processes to match, being able to give feedback in a way that's constructive, being able to receive feedback in a way that's constructive. Those things are definitely challenging. From a business standpoint, I haven't had the same depth of experience that, let's say, Tejas has had. Like even when I was doing my studio, like I mentioned, our model was such that Juhi and I were the only two permanent employees, so to speak, and we would just collaborate with like specialists. Like if we needed a researcher or if we needed an illustrator, we would collaborate with them on projects.
Hmm.
So there, I mean, on the business side, I would think that building a team, the biggest consideration would just be the added overhead, right? Like you have to make sure that there's enough coming in for everybody to be for the whole endeavor to be sustainable, and that adds on a lot of pressure. That was actually a big part of like influencing our decision to be the way we did. We structured the studio, and I mean, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of plus points of having to do that, right? Like when things, I mean, tech was the least affected. Let's be very honest. Like we weren't really we weren't short of work, so to speak. Though we did see a lean period where a lot of clients who had given us commitments ended up backing out because things were changing so quickly on the business end. But at that point, we were very grateful for the fact that we didn't have any of these overheads. We were fully remote. We worked out of our houses. We only brought people on a project basis. So it gave us that flexibility to like more than just flexibility. It gave us just the peace of mind where we realized that okay, we are not responsible for anybody else but ourselves. That being said, I mean, of course, there are a lot of benefits to having your own team. In that, like, I do feel that sometimes I would like a predictable bandwidth, right? Like, even in that model, every time a project came our way, I would then go and start hustling and reaching out to people and, you know, asking them if they wanted to come on board for the project or not. Whereas if I did have a team, then the business side of me knew very well that, okay, I have someone to take care of the supply. I just have to worry about the supply, and that distinction really was something that at least to me it seemed like that was something that I was missing out on. I'm sure Tejas could like just elaborate more on that. Like it seems like he has the most depth of experience on that front. Yeah.
Okay. Tejas, would you like to add something on the part where you are able to separate out your roles, and that is an advantage in the team? Is that what your question was, Rahul?
No, I just meant that like he has the there wasn't a question at the end of that.
Oh,
I
there
just
no
meant that
no
like
question.
he's
No,
got
there.
the
Okay, okay,
then
got that.
yeah.
All right. So I
Yeah.
do want to share a few things from my perspective because I have recently been changing the tracks, like in the over the last 2 years or so. What I do, and I will definitely connect this to one of the comments that Nav has made on the uh, chat, live chat, which is between being solo versus running a business. Running a business, as in running a business with a team, I would say. Where have you felt more freedom, and what has been more stressful? So I would totally add that adding a team has increased my stress level. There's no doubt about that. Right from the very first thing, that I have made a so long, I was only making commitments on the fact that I will deliver your project. I know how to code, I trust my skills. I know how to design, I trust my skills. I understand your problem statement, I trust my skills, and I will deliver the project. But this is the first time I'm having to make a commitment that I'll pay your bills, or I will pay you at a certain point in time, at a predictable way, which I have not necessarily managed to do that for myself as a solo person, because I've always seen, hey, there's this highs and lows and all these coming in. Now I'm making a commitment to multiple individuals, saying that I will have a fixed pay cycle for you and I'll ensure that that will happen. That's extremely anxiety inducing and stress inducing. Add to that, when you add people in the mix, and it's general, humans are unpredictable in a way, and they're different in a way that y- whatever you plan as this happy path, that this is the happy path I will take, I will add a team member and our product, and now we can take on two projects in parallel. I'll add a third team member, we can take three projects in parallel. Everything has fallen flat on its face, basically. uh, and that you only realize when you start doing it. And not to blame anyone, I think it's only to blame myself, because uh, 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 my experience was not there to understand how people grow, or how humans grow, how that gelling of multiple skills come together in a way. So what has happened is that we had this rosy picture that when we will have these three extra people in the team, we'll be able to take three projects in parallel and this and that. What we realize is, for the long, even till date, I would say that our overall productivity on how much work we are able to put out as a 5 member team today, not all 5 members are executing work, I must add that, is not significantly greater, or at least not even compares to what we were thinking that it will grow, to what we were just as a two-person studio. Because as two-person studio, the biggest thing that we did not have to do is manage people, and so many communication lag and so many other things, which I will also touch on the point where Puneet had added, like what are your experience about managing people and handling people issues that extend beyond solo. And the fact that people take time to grow up to that point, which is, even if someone comes with a good development skill, just to align to the principles you have set, that this is the coding guidelines I want, or this is the and if you have a clear vision and opinion, it will take a year probably. And maybe my experience is unique, maybe someone else can say that no, we have been able to manage that in 3 months because we had such a great training exercise and all. I still remember that when I added my when I joined my first job, I was put through 6 months of training, literally, to kind of gel to that organization. And when we are as such a small studio, can we give 6 months of training to someone else than who's like getting doing the job? And that itself has been such a learning experience to for us, to do two three things. One is to lower our expectations, which is not to say that set your expectations low, I'm not saying that, but the lower our expectations from what we were originally thinking. And maybe we had very high expectations. The other part is that letting go, in the sense that uh, very often we start thinking of, are we letting go of some of our USPs? Are we letting go of the control, the quality control that we had? Are we letting go of the timeline commitment things that we had? Because now there is so much communication involved in this. If something we thought will take 1 week, now it is taking 2 weeks, because just internal communications and so many other things. So just that aspect we haven't crossed yet. And occasionally you can take vacations, but not always, also because it's an unpredictable space wherein sometimes you're not able to take vacation because there are three people and someone else has to take the vacation, which kind of prevents you from taking the thing. And you have to manage and do some firefighting because there have been problems in the delivery, because you did not have 100% control. So if I think if you have, coming from this mindset of wanting very high control, which we often come from that mindset, at least my personal, if I reflect on my personality and my co-founder's personality, we would like to have high control on the quality, the timelines, the this and that, everything. At that point of time, adding team members is is a tough learning journey which we are still going through. So I won't say it's all rosy, but we'll be at a better place than we were before.
I had a question, a very quick question. I know we have to get into audience questions. So, very quick
Hmm.
question, because I feel like the drivers to influence the decision to scale is based on a certain goal that one sets for themselves, right? For me, like for example, let me go first. Like for me, my goal would be, it would be great for me to continue to do this, sustain this model of being independent and getting collaborators per project, and try optimize that system better, because that's my ideal system where I don't have to worry about overheads, everything, but pay people their dues for the contributions they make in projects, and also plug into their projects potentially. The reason I would see to go hiring and stuff is because I've seen success in that model, but it's also very stressful as far as management goes. But if I have to see hiring, it will be as a, I at today I would say it would be as a response to a failure of that model. So I would like to know why did y'all scale, or what was the goal, like what's the ideal
So
end game?
we definitely tried a model where we would work with freelancers and individual consultants and all. Our biggest challenge in that entire thing was that, a, timelines don't match. If we like a collaborator, there is no assurance that we'll be able to work with the same collaborator when the next project comes in. That's number one. The second is every project is a journey for growth for both sides. As soon as that growth is realized, we stop working with each other, and then in the next collaboration we are again growing with a new collaborator again. And then I think then you start seeing that cycle again, that I said that whenever I see that that cycle is happening, then I feel that, hey, we have to break out of the cycle. So what we realize is that every project that we work, the reason Pratik and I had become so efficient in our working is because we just knew how to communicate in the most efficient manner. And now there's a new person. It took us a year to actually get our communication efficient, and then as soon as we start realizing that, at that point of time the at that point of time we have to leave that conversation, that relationship, and go on to the next relationship. So that is where I think our entire cycle thing comes in, and why we decide to switch.
Got it. What about you,
Yeah.
Tejas,
Yeah,
Rahul?
even I would concur with what Souvik said. Like after having done the collaborator model for the past 2 years, it's attrition by default. Like you don't necessarily get to build or grow. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's a
attrition.
fair way to put it, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, so just not having that, and like I mentioned earlier, like just the lack of predictability for your bandwidth. Like when like for me, like the process would go like, okay, project.
Is Rahul audible?
No, I
No,
can't
not
hear him.
really.
Okay, can't hear Rahul very well. Okay, sorry. So, okay, let me go to the audience questions at this point of time, because we are also running short of time. And Nav had a very interesting first question, which is, if you had to choose solo versus studio at 2 points in your career, early career and later part, let's say post 35, what would you choose and why? Tejas, let me ask this question to you.
Uh, I, yeah. So I first an admission. I always been the since I moved to digital design. I always been the oldest person in any room. So I like the time frame Nev mentioned, the time points. I don't even remember when I passed that. It's been so many years I've been past that year, that age. But anyways, I don't think it's for me it wouldn't be related to age thing. Although it was more like a certain number of experience. And I call this, like whenever I'm chatting with someone else, I call this designers 7 years itch, because I've noticed this starts to happen exactly at 7 years when you don't know what to do. Like it's sort of a midlife crisis for designers. But uh, so yeah, I actually expanded the studio post 35. I had already passed that age, and before that, the reason for me was not so much about how old I was, because I entered the industry very late in my life, but it was more about, so what Savik you mentioned at some point, that you need to get your own craft and skills in order before you can think about like moving to a larger studio model, which was exactly the point. Like I wasn't very confident about that until I actually passed that age. So it wasn't really age related decision versus where I was in my career, sort of a thing. But if
Right.
the question is more like it might also tie to individuals' maturity, what other commitments they have in their life outside of work. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah,
but
Rahul.
I'm not.
Rahul, can we hear you now? No, I think you'll need to check your mic, Rahul. There's just maybe you do that in the meanwhile. Hamsa, do you think you want to add anything to this question? Which
I
is there a age factor in this when you'd like to add to team,
I
add
think
team members?
I ran a studio when I was like 23, which is like too young, and I think it could have only happened then because if I was old enough, better than to do it. So I think it was perfect. I think doing that early on was great because you make all those mistakes, and it's that time to kind of
make mistakes, learn, experiment, and stuff. I think it was a great journey. Like, so for me, actually doing the studio and then going freelance, like freelance independent, has worked out so far.
All right. Okay, let me go move on to the next question because we need to close soon as well. Uh, so while extending beyond, there is this question by Puneet Sethi which says, "What are your experience about managing people and handling people issues when extending beyond solo?" I did speak a little bit at length about this one. Anything that any of you would want to add to my answer?
First answer, no?
No, no. The answer that I had definitely touched upon this point a little bit. That when we get people, managing people and handling people becomes a lot of work, and that
Huh.
is
Yeah, that.
definitely a point that I feel is that goes really
Yes.
underestimated, and the fact that this the we haven't still crossed that bridge in our own
Yeah.
organization. I have still not been able to processify things enough to align things enough to to the point that my people management is efficient at this point of time. And I definitely feel that, and I agree with this point, that handling people issues is a big factor that gets added when you're not solo anymore. Would you have any contrary experience, Tejas?
No, I totally agree. Like, and as you add more people, like you go beyond 3 people, 4 people, then that actually becomes your full-time job. Like, you're not then, even if you had any creative involvement before, at that number of people, you are not a creative people anymore. Your time is mostly overlooking their work and managing all the other issues. And
Right.
that's only natural. Yeah.
Yep. Another comment that Puneet has made is, when extending beyond solo, is there a fear that business side of you would force you to pick up work that the creative side of you would otherwise not pick? Hamsa, I think this should be
Interesting.
answered by you.
Interesting question. I actually, there is a almost a delight because there was one amazing thing that happened when there were people who worked with me was a self-initiated work. I think the only time there was time for self-initiated work was when someone was on payroll. There was no other time for it. So I feel like if there, like I would rather put in time there and like than take projects that don't align as much, but there is less fear of that because of maybe the I don't I want to cross everything while saying this because of just general queries that are coming in and stuff. At least for the right now there are lesser of those fears, but I think it gives you when you have some free time and free resources, it gives you some time to it gives you some time to like do self initiative, which I've never had the time to do solo.
In fact, I would add one thing. There's the opposite side of this as well. One is to fear that, hey, I have to earn money. That's why I need to take any project that comes my way. But then the opposite fear is also there, that my team member doesn't want to do the projects that I want to do. They would rather have me do, and that's also a nudge. Like when you have more opinions in the team that comes in, then at that point of time you have to start letting go of the kind of creative projects you wanted to do, because they might want to do some other creative projects in a way. uh, does that fear come in, Hamsa?
Uh, like the fact, yes, we've had like a 3D artist once, like in we had actually got an intern and they were like, but I don't want to do this, my thing lies somewhere else. And so that happens for sure, and so that's why like it for me the collaborator model has been working much better because I can just say, all right, these skills, because you don't have to force with someone's skills and things that they are not going to do unless they are an everything is, which in this world it becomes rarer and rarer to find. And also it's become scarier to hire also that kind of person, because if you hire another person who does everything laterally, it's a difficult thing to find, because when someone is applying for a job they want to hone one particular aspect of this thing, and if they're working with you they want to be able to hone that so that when if they god forbid leave, like they have like that thing to go to. So I can totally see. And also our the issue with content websites itself, like the fact that design jobs are so heavily focused on UI UX, and the fact that we are doing a lot of like news websites and
think tank websites and all of those things are almost like not seeing the same attitude as the West. So I would, I can see why someone may be a little bit uh, like they may be a little wary about the projects they choose as an employee within an organization.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think all these contrary viewpoints you have to start taking care of as when you start, and definitely all these fears are true in a way. Puneet has asked one question to Tejas. Tejas, in general, what amount of your time gets spent on operational things versus creative things? What's your take on mindset on and mindset on having to deal with the operational stuff?
So first, like I'll answer the second question first. It's
Yeah.
something that you also one also has to learn because you don't even know what you need to learn until you face it. It's sort of a very uncharted. At a personal level, it's always a very uncharted territory. But we are currently we I work with three other designers who are like working with us full time, and then a few consultants, one or two consultants. Uh, so that's close to like four people, and we are running three projects at least in parallel. That would take at least 75% of my time, very in a creative slash management sort of management of creative work, and other 25% in operational things. But I would say at our size, the operational stuff is still very minimal. Like it's not really as large. Most of the stuff we do is because and it will also not. It will be something that comes in phases. So we at some point we have to say formalize our policies. So that's like one big project. But after that, it becomes incremental. Uh, Payroll, it's like one time a month sort of a thing. So I don't think it's very regular. Some things come in phases and also very take up very small time at that.
Yeah, and think in my case, one of the team members I added was not in India, and that added a lot of logistics and operational things for me to figure out.
Uh,
So I guess, uh, yeah, I guess it there will always be some operational stuff, and you'll have to deal with it because it's a part of running a business at the end of the day. I think the last question we'll take, and that is how we should close this conversation, which is Nav's question. What has been the biggest driving factor to move to beyond, move beyond studio? Move to factor to move to beyond studio. So basically, what Nav is trying to ask is, what will be the one biggest factor that will make your decision to move from being a solo or an individual independent consultant to having a team and growing it as a business? Will it be money? Will it be new challenges? Will it be stress, freedom? What? So let's do a cycle. Tejas.
I, I have the opposite question. What would be the driving factor to move from a studio to solo? Like I think that's a more interesting one.
Let's answer both questions. Tejas,
So
two
I think
questions.
Hansa did bring this up, like what the driving factor was. I think at some point you are like either limited by the business or it could be all of the above. Like it could be uh, becoming a better business or better managed business. It could be becoming more creative, like doing more creative work as a group than what you are individually capable of. It could also be money, like right, like you earn more, relatively more than what you were individually. uh, New challenges, new skills, and new challenges, and hopefully some freedom too.
What will be the biggest one? Sorry, I'm putting you in the corner.
I think new challenges
New
for
challenges,
for
and
us,
the
new challenges.
reverse.
Yeah.
The reverse, since you put that question from a studio back to an individual.
I don't think it will happen now. Hansa actually answered this very well. You develop such a diverse set of
Okay.
skills laterally that you probably wouldn't fit into a single role if you were running a studio and then went back to like you couldn't take up a job. If you were to run a solo thing, it would probably be if you acquired personally a new skill or a completely different skill, and that becomes your calling now.
Okay. Almost touch and go for Hamza. Hamza, why don't you try to answer this question in like one word? Biggest thing to move from one to the other, both sides.
Solo to studio would be new challenges, realizing full potential of yourself itself, because it is still a very personal thing for me. From studio to solo is, I guess, like the just the fact. I guess it would be agility. I think agility, freedom, provided you have the means to kind of grab those different opportunities.
All right, Rahul, I think we can hear you now. Say hi,
Yeah.
hello.
Hi, can you
Yeah,
hear me?
perfect, perfect, perfect. Can
Excellent.
you take on this question? This is the final
Yes.
question.
So for me, I think the biggest, I think everybody has their own personal answers. Like you'll do it for your own reasons, whether it be money, team challenges, whatever. For me, going from solo to studio, honestly, the biggest driving factor would be just to have a more robust process and like end up with a better product at the end of it, and to be able to like, I mean, personally for me, like it's a I would say a sort of goal of mine to set up an environment for a team where people can come in and do like good work and just enjoy their day. So that's a big driving factor in terms of a studio, like being able to set up a nice team. And to go from a studio to solo, I think just like the only reason I would do it is if you felt like you wanted to pursue a creative path that was different from what you were sort of, because once you move into a team, you can tend to get stuck in doing a certain kind of work or like a certain process or something of that sort. So if I needed to like reinvent myself in such a manner, like do something as drastic as shutting down my team and being like, okay, I want to go to solo, that would probably be the only reason I could think of.
All right, I'll bite the bullet and I'd say that uh, to move to a studio, there was definitely something that is like maybe we'll make more money. Okay. That And I do believe that you might be able to realize this after some point in time, but not definitely not initially. So if I have to advise someone, then it'll not be for the money part. And I would definitely say that uh, to take on challenges and projects that we as a small team could not take up, to something that will have high impact, large impact, and things like that, you need cross skill sets, things that go beyond what you can achieve as an individual, that we were severely feeling constrained. That's why we wanted to switch to the other side, to grow as a team basically. And on the flip side, if I have to go back, I think if I see that there is again monotony keeping in, there's just too much just people management, not achieving this desire to grow as individually, and there's things start plateauing a bit, I guess at that point would be the right time to say that, hey, let's do a recheck and think about what do we really want to do, because there's definitely a part of you that is unable to do the things that you want to do when you're catering to an entire team. uh, with that, I'll conclude this conversation. Thanks a lot, Hamsa. Thanks a lot, Rahul. Thanks, Tejas. uh, it was a very nice conversation. Sorry about the small technical glitches that kept happening throughout. There were a few at my end as well. And hopefully we'll bring you a more robust conversation, technically speaking, next time. Uh, for now, until a last plug-in for the fact that, hey, I think we all four of us are looking to hire something or the other. Please check our Twitter bios so that you can find what are the roles we are all hiring for. And we obviously, as two studio heads, have our own Twitter profile where you can give in your ideas about what can we take up as a topic in future conversations. For now, goodbye.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Souvik.
Thank you.